we're continuing to find limits at infinity, or negative infinity as the case may be. And here we have the limit as x approaches infinity, and then in turn as x approaches negative infinity, of the square root of 4x plus 1 over 3x minus 1. If I were to use direct substitution, I would end up with infinity over infinity, which tells me absolutely nothing. So I'm going to do what I did before and multiply by the largest power of x that appears in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 1 over x in the numerator and denominator. Here's the thing though. The numerator is the square root of 4x plus 1. So it would actually make more sense if I, in the numerator, multiplied by something that had a square root, right? Speaking the same language as what's already there. And in the denominator here, I'm multiplying by 1 over x. I need to multiply by the same thing in the numerator and denominator. That's really important. And as it turns out, the square root of x squared is the same as x, provided x is positive, right? So this gives me the limit as x approaches infinity of the square root of 4 plus 1 over x squared. It was already in a square root, so it made it easy for me to distribute in there, divided by 3 plus 1 over x. I mean 3 minus 1 over x. In the square root, as we take the limit as x approaches infinity, 1 over x squared is going to go to 0. In the denominator, 1 over x is going to go to 0. This result is going to be the square root of 4 over 3, or 2/3. It becomes a little more interesting when we consider the limit as x approaches negative infinity of the square root of 4x squared plus 1 over 3x minus 1. I want to do the same thing I did before. I need to multiply by 1. If I multiply by 1 over the square root of x squared over 1 over x, it's not exactly 1. The reason is that since x is going to negative infinity, we know that x is negative, which means that 1 over x is negative. But in the numerator, we have 1 over the square root of x squared, which is actually the absolute value of x, and so we know that 1 over the square root of x squared is positive. And as you know, positive divided by negative is negative. So how do I fix this? Well, the denominator is negative, right? 1 over x is negative. So let me just make the numerator negative by introducing a negative symbol, right? So the negative of 1 over the square root of x squared is now negative. And now I have a negative numerator and a negative denominator. Now we're multiplying by 1. Now let me clean this up a little bit. And the rest is going to go pretty much like before. We have the limit as x approaches negative infinity of the negative of the square root of 4 plus 1 over x squared divided by 3 minus 1 over x. As before, those terms that have x in the denominator are going to go to 0, and we end up with a negative 2/3 this time. That should make sense. The original expression here had a square root in the numerator, so is positive, and then a 3x minus 1 in the denominator, and so would be negative, so this should have a negative answer. And just to show you that everything's on the up and up, here I have the graph of y equals the square root of 4x squared plus 1 over 3x minus 1. And we can see here that as x goes to infinity, that's approaching 2/3 from above. And then as x approaches negative infinity, that's going to approach negative 2/3. This thing has 2 horizontal asymptotes.